Okay, it is 6 o'clock. By the clock on the wall at Town Hall, I will call the Brewster Finance Committee meeting to order. As required by the open meeting law, we're informing you that the town will be videotaping this public meeting. In addition, if anyone else intends to either video or audio tape this meeting, they are required to inform the chair. We have, again, no takers. We also request that all cell phones be turned to vibrator off in respect of the meeting. Tom, you want to lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, so to start our meeting, we have one quote-unquote housekeeping item. Article 4 in the special town meeting warrant, audit services that where information was requested, which the town, Jim Gallagher, prepared a letter and sent it to the committee, and everybody's had a chance to read that. And so are there any follow-up questions on that?
Just an observation. A very thorough and definitive job of responding to the questions, which means I have no questions.
Okay, we'll take that. All right, without any further questions, can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
The funds are coming from?
Available overlay.
Available overlay. Sorry.
All right, I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So carried. I will count, Mr. Bridges, you as a yes?
Sounds good to me.
Yep. What's that?
Yes.
Okay, 900. Okay. All right, housekeeping duties are done. Okay, the next item we have on the agenda is item number 1, a presentation and discussion on the with the Nauset School Building Committee. In addition to discuss potential future meetings, I welcome the committee up. So, this is kind of a new forum. We have provided a list, this committee put together a very robust list of questions. And so I think the best way to start this is allow the school committee, superintendent and chair of the building committee to go through their entire list of questions. So if anybody has a question, if you can make a note, and then we will come back around to everyone, trying to make this as timely as we can. So we have a very list of questions. I will turn it over to Mr. O'Reilly, the chairman, our representative of the school committee.
Thank you. For the record, I'm John O'Reilly. I'm a member of I'm a Brewster resident, member of the Regional School Committee, have been for 9 years. Before that, I was a member of the Elementary School Board for 9 years. I have 18 years invested in this district. I thought what would be a good kicking off would just be a very quick rundown of a timeline for this building project, and also talk about the school committee's actions with regards to enrollment. So, and I'm reading from a list, and we can make this list available to you folks. I'm not going to go through it in detail because we'll be here longer than we need to be, I think. Back in 2012, Habib Associates was an architectural firm that had been working with the region on various projects. Developed the capital asset report, and that included a cursory review of the 3 facilities, the high school, middle school, and central office. People refer to it as the Habib report. At that time, a capital asset subcommittee for the region was formed to review the report. In late fall 2012, the capital asset subcommittee decided to work on the years 1 to 3 of the Habib report. That would go hand in hand with our capital plan. For those of you who have seen the Habib report, he had broken it out to projects that were slated to be completed years 1 through 3, 3 through 7, and 7 through 10, 10 years being the latest. So, so the first year in 2012, we formulated the capital plan to coincide with the Habib report, and the capital asset subcommittee, along with the regional school committee, chipped away at the items that we could handle utilizing the annual capital fund that the four towns contribute to. In 2013, the Capital Asset Subcommittee extended the Habib report and plugging in the various aspects of the report into our 5-year plan and presented that to the towns, along with a copy of the Habib report. In 2014, it became pretty clear to those of us on the Capital Asset Subcommittee that we couldn't keep using the annual contribution of the capital fund to address some of those large ticket items. We were talking about heating systems, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, a whole host of issues that were at both facilities. So we met with the Habib Associates again, and we focused on the high school with looking at a significant repair upgrade in the coming years at the high school facility. The high school is 44 years old, and there were major plumbing, electrical, and lighting issues, among other things, that needed to be addressed. It was a consensus of the subcommittee at that point and the school committee later on that a SOI, or Statement of Interest, would be developed and presented to the MSBA for a major renovation reconstruction project program that they are offering. In November of 2014, the region officially authorized the region to start formulating the SOI, and it was also discussed that we would start discussions with the 4-member towns about a long-range major renovation project at the high school. In 2015, the Regional School Committee voted to formally submit the Statement of Interest in that calendar year for a major renovation project at the high school. And in 2016, February 2016, the region members had met with, or actually the Capital Asset Subcommittee members had met with the town administrators and the town accountants of the 4 towns to review the Statement of Interest, review the purpose of the SOI, and really it came down to that, and it was a consensus of the group that meeting, that the school committee would be in a very difficult position to keep coming back to the taxpayers every 2, 4, 5 years, whatever the frequency would be, to tackle one major project at one facility and then come back 2, 3, 4 years later and do another major project looking for either a debt exclusion or an override. So after discussion with the town managers and town accountants back in 2016, the school committee took the positive feedback that we received from those individuals and authorized the region to submit the SOI. And that, again, that was in April of 2016. We, in 2017, towards the end of 2016, I believe it was, we were accepted into the SOI, and in February of 2016, we again, Jim Nowak, the Assistant Director of Finance and Operations, had reviewed with the committee the cost of the feasibility study between $500 and $1.5 million. And it was also indicated to the committee that the superintendent had heard from 3 of the 4 towns and that they had place items or place card holders on the warrant for the feasibility study. So in 2017, the committee authorized to move forward with the 4 towns to appropriate the funds described for the feasibility study in the amount of $1.3 million. So again, in May of 2017, the 4 towns approved the borrowing of $1.3 million to move forward with the feasibility study. And then getting into July of 2017, the building committee names were presented to the school committee. And during that same period, the regional school committee had meetings over 4 or 5 months to talk about the enrollment issue and what was the enrollment issue going to be going forward for the project. And then, this is more recent history, and I'm not going to go into it as the OPM and the architect being submitted, but we can certainly give this to the FinCom, email that to Mike. So as I was saying, with regards to the student enrollment, one of the first things the school committee had to deal with was establish an enrollment number for the project. And again, in that timeframe of 2017, the committee met over a 4 or 5 month time, several times, and to discuss the enrollment going forward. The issues the committee looked at, and I think this is important for everybody to understand, the committee looked at, they looked at issues revolving around the existing program at the high school and how robust it was and the high quality of educational programming that we were offering. We also looked at where the program was going to be headed at the high school. High school has recently adopted the IB program, and it is just getting up and running and established now, so we're looking forward to that to grow. And we also looked at the choice and tuition students at the high school and their impact to the program. Another aspect we looked at is the configuration of the high school. And the committee discussed different ideas on reconfiguration, what could be, how the high school or how the middle and high school could be reconfigured. And one of them included discussion of bringing the 7th and 8th graders up to the high school campus and then sending the 6th graders back to the respective elementary schools of the 4 towns. Reconfiguration also included the elimination of choice in the tuition students from Provincetown and Truro. So after multiple meetings, the region school committee decided going forward we would establish it at 905, including the choice and tuition students. The rationale for that decision, there are several points to it. We felt as a committee that our current educational program is second to none. We may be biased, but we feel it's second to none. I think our status as a high school, Blue Ribbon High School, support that. And we also felt that the student body that we had provided and allowed us to continue with a robust program. So we looked at what removal of a choice and tuition student would do to impact the program, and we found it to be drastic in that it would result in a loss of income to both, income from the both groups to the district. The loss of income would result in ending of some programs that have been very, very successful up at the high school. We also talked about even if the 4 towns were willing to fund the program for just the regional students at the level they currently fund the 904 program, it would still impact the program and the educational experience of our students. And the reason for that is quite simple. Right now we have full-time teachers, full-time teachers' assistants, and with the lack of choice in tuition students, we would be relegated to relying on part-time teachers. And we have found over the years that trying to hire quality part-time teachers for this district is very, very difficult. So that in itself would impact the program for the students. The idea of pushing 6th graders back to the elementary school didn't go too far because, one, it wasn't part of the initial SOI and the feasibility study that was authorized through the MSBA and the 4 towns. We had no conversation up to that point with any of our fellow elementary school committee members. And I can only speak for myself being from Brewster, and I don't think I need to tell anyone of the situation that Brewster's facing with 2 elementary schools. I did not feel it would be appropriate. Again, speaking for myself as a taxpayer, I need to make that clear. I did not think it would be appropriate to push another 80 kids back to Brewster and then not be able to look at what would be a feasible way to consolidate the 2 buildings. I brought up the fact that I sat on the elementary school board for 9 years, During that 9 years, we discussed and faced two potential options of consolidation into one school. And adding students to it would just compound the issue. So for me, pushing the sixth graders back was not a feasible alternative. And when you looked at the 7th and 8th graders up at the high school, again, first and foremost, that wasn't part of the feasibility study or the SOI, a statement of interest initially. And two, you would end up building two separate schools, if you will, and then share the cafeteria and gymnasium. The school committee felt that putting the 7th and 8th graders on a campus with high schoolers would not do their educational experience any benefit, and felt that we wanted to keep the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at the middle school as it currently is, and look strictly at a reconstruction for high school students. And in closing, I think it's very important for this board to understand, and Brewster's taxpayers to understand, that when we were looking at the 904 number, we weren't really talking about what the impact of that to the cost of the reconstruction was going to be. We looked at it purely from, and this is our job, looked at the ability for a child to receive the highest education that he or she can. And we felt that doing anything but including the choice and tuition students, as well as a 9 through 12 building, was the best way to ensure continued high student success and continued high student achievement. So that was really how the committee came to the 904 number. So I thought it was important to run through some history on, how we got to the feasibility part and the building committee, and also tell you from the school committee where we were coming from as a school committee with the enrollment. So at that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom for some comments, and then we'll get into the questions.
So thanks, John, and I just want to build upon John's comments relative to the academic program, and I think that is at the forefront of the discussion about this facility and the programming that we hope to have as far out as the 2050. The huge change in public education came with the Ed Reform Act, and I would assume a number of you are familiar with that. It was really around 25 years ago. We were, like most high schools, involved in a project where all of our students had study halls. I mean, at that time, I think we had crossed over 800. We were growing at that time, and that meant 800 sections of kids going into study halls of some nature, and in some cases, students having 2 study halls. Ed Reform came along, and it was basically mandated that you weren't to have study halls going forward. And there was a provision that talked about directed study, but directed study meant a teacher in that subject was teaching the students who had that study, and that's very difficult to pull off staffing-wise. So at that point, the communities were very, very supportive of recognizing that we had to fill all of those slots that were going to students relative to their schedules having study hall to have courses. And it led to a robust discussion about building up the elective opportunities for students in the arts and the applied arts areas, and as well as the challenging coursework that we were hoping to move into relative to all students having an opportunity. And that really led to a whole different focus relative to challenging each student to do their very best, and in many cases, we often talked about being dream makers, hoping that each of the students' dreams would come true in terms of what they were chasing after high school. An example would be that eventually, and even as I know that you're going to want to talk at some point in this journey about the makeup of our schedule and the impact of choice and on that schedule as well, and things like this. The piece that was interesting was that when we build our master schedule, and the master schedule is built each year on the course selections of the students. So every year we are creating a unique schedule to meet the needs of the courses that students want to take. Within that scheduling, you'll find that students let's just stay within the English department. Every student is required to take 4 years of English, but they have a choice in working with their guidance counselor to take honors level, college prep level, and we actually have a program called B level for students who have fallen behind. And we're working at a different pace relative to the key skills that need to be built upon for them to go forward. From that standpoint, what we were seeing was that that schedule, as you can imagine, really demands far more sections than just everybody taking 9th grade English. Over time, what has happened is that we have found that 20 plus years ago, we had 6 students take an exam in advanced placement. So the school has had advanced placement for a number of years. This past year, we had almost 600 exams taken. And we have 23 programs in that area alone for kids to choose from. The interesting piece is that it both has the ability to give students an understanding of what a freshman college class would be like, but also in some cases, depending upon their scoring, a number of universities will recognize that work, and many of our students go in now with college credits. And with the cost of college, that has been a real benefit for many, many of our families going forward. Let me just give you some background information. We have 23 AP courses. Within that program, last year, we had 284 students participate in the program, and 557 exams were taken. Of those 254 students, 88% of the students scored 3 or higher, which typically gets you credit for those exams taken. So that's really, really impressive work. The sort of robust planning that we've done that John had mentioned was AP is unique to itself, and we went down a track that was looking, as John had mentioned, the International Baccalaureate program. And we applied for the International Baccalaureate program. We were selected. We wanted to go in as a diploma school, and we are now in our 2nd year. And in our 2nd year, we have seen a robust interest in that program going forward already. We think choices are good for students depending upon their learning styles, with the backbone of challenging all of our students going forward. And I just want to finish. I'm sorry if this is redundant and you know all of this information. I think a number of you are newer to the community possibly. And I wanted to make sure you understood some of this information. This high school has been recognized, as John had mentioned, a National Blue Ribbon High School. There are 2 major awards in the state of Massachusetts, the Vanguard School of Excellence and the Compass Award winning schools. And the school has received that. On numerous years, we have been ranked in U.S. News and World Report and Newsweek as one of the top high schools in the country. And we are consistently ranked tremendously high within the high school rankings in terms of the performance of our school. And we think that that's very, very important, because we often say in our business, if not the education for our students here on the Outer Cape, what will it be? And giving them the best opportunity to make that happen. I'm a proud parent of 2 graduates who came through the system. I had a daughter and son both come through the system, and I think those opportunities that we give them to reach out and compete with any students across the country are very, very important. And I think it bears itself out. So, thank you.
Okay, so do you want to go through some of the other questions now, or do you want to open up for questions from the committee?
Through the chair?
Yes, sir.
Why don't we just take the questions you sent us?
Okay.
We went through all the trouble of doing that, and we appreciate that. So we take them 1 through 24, I believe.
Perfect.
And go from there.
You got it.
Number 1 is a summary of the process criteria for establishing a 905 with MSBA enrollment number. And does that include school choice? That's the question. And I believe that's been answered, unless Tom wants to add something else.
So I believe Greg has passed out, Mike, I think you received a packet of information for your benefit, and you can take your leisure with this. That's the actual document that we eventually were called to the MSBA, and they have their own demographic specialists who work with our data. And when we went into the meeting, it really wasn't, we were negotiating what the number was going to be. They had made their mind up from their research, and you can see a variety of ways that they were looking at it in terms of what they were going to use for the building number going forward, which happened to be 905. I can tell you that we did have some discussion in terms of, we believe that the International Baccalaureate program is going to be in a position, if we stay in our choice program at the levels that we are, because we know that there are over 300 students who can't get an International Baccalaureate seat. And obviously, we have been a well-respected school relative to school choice. And so, although we made the case, the MSBA had made their mind up in terms of their demographics, and the number was going to be 905 students. And that packet represents anything that we saw, including the cover letter that I had received from their office, identifying what the number would be. So.
Question 2 was, what does the 905 MSBA enrollment figure mean? Is that the maximum size school that the district would receive MSBA funding support for? And the 905 is the benchmark that we go through the process of MSBA's 8-step program. The 905 is what generates the number of square feet that we're allowed to have as a high school. Every student has so many square feet. Every student has so many dollars attached to them. So the funding formula from MSBA is very strict, but it's also applied equally across the state. If you're from Belmont, or Longmeadow, or Nauset, you get the same consideration. So what that means is that MSBA is going to help us with this project. It's actually their project because it's their process. We're going through their steps to fund a school of 905 students with the costs that we generate for square footage based on the educational plan for 905 kids, which is a major component of this project. It's a 2-step process. We go through the process since last October of developing an educational plan moving forward for the high school, what kind of courses, what kind of teaching spaces are going to be needed. And then we generate a number of classrooms and square footage for those courses, which gets us to where we are with the project we have today. And before I go any further, I need to introduce Mr. Chris Easley. He's the chairman of the Regional School Committee. I'm sorry. I should have done that up front. So that's who we are. So I think that answers the question, and if not, you can just do a follow-up.
Thank you.
Question 3, is there any chance we could get more funding from MSBA to offset the cost of building a school to house and educate choice students? As proposed, choice students would constitute 20 to 25% of the student body. And I think the answer is no. I mean, the MSB has already taken into consideration what the student body is, where they're coming from, and the funding is the funding source. Again, choice kids are part of the 905 total enrollment, and that's not the bottom line, but the top line, quite frankly, of where we go and how we can get anything from Commonwealth, Massachusetts on MSBA. They have, again, a very robust situation where they pay for certain things that they want us to include. They don't pay for certain things. Case in point, if we're creating offices for the administration, which we are, they pay $0 of state money for office space. They pay for site costs, moving dirt around the property. They pay 8 cents on the dollar. Everything else is up to the local taxpayer to pay. So that it's a sliding scale of what's called reimbursable costs, and we work hard to make sure that those costs are in line with what we need to do for the project. Oh, I'm in trouble. Sorry, JP. Question number 4, would there be any change in the way funding support would be calculated if we built a smaller school, one that would meet the needs of the 4 member towns? With the formulas remaining the same, though obviously amounts would change given presumably a lower cost to build a smaller school. That's a lot of suppositions. We have been working, as you can tell, with this MSBA for a project of 905. If the school committee decided that they wanted to change that process, we would have to notify MSBA that we are taking a pause for certain reasons and get back to them with a potentially different project. However, we would be giving up our slot on the payment schedule. Keep in mind that we were picked in year 2 for introduction to MSBA funding. Most schools take 5 or 6 or 7 years, and those schools that walk away from MSBA funding for whatever reason really never get back on the list. And I'll use Tisbury as an example that happened this past May. They had a project that was voted down by 11 voters in Tisbury, so they didn't get the state money. So now they are scrambling to use local funds to do a Band-Aid approach to a building that should have been replaced based on issues they identified, i.e. lead paint, mold, those types of things. So they are scrambling. So the state said, you walked away from the money and we'll give it to somebody else because there are hundreds of other school projects that need the money that the state has. And keep, the newspaper articles locally about DY give you some idea of how tight the funding is. So funding support is what it is based on 905. If the school committee decided to revisit that, it would be a pause and no guarantee that we'd ever get any money from Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Can I ask just a follow-up?
Let him go through all the questions, make a note, because I don't want to.
I just want to make sure that question actually gets answered. Because I think you answered 6 as your answer to 5.
Actually, it was number 4 is the answer question I read.
Oh, right, because, yeah, I actually had a different list where my number 1 is a different question.
Okay,
So I'm sorry,
that's okay. So the number 5 on my list is,
just simply the question around, does the formula change, or is the formula a standard state formula that then you have 905? And if you input 624 into that formula, it would work through all the calculus and come up with just a different number,
potentially.
by potentially.
As I explained, MSB has a process. And their process is based on student enrollment and other factors. The other factors would be for the smaller enrollment that you would be asking funding for, there's a different educational plan. That the different educational plan also generates support from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it's not a dollar for dollars, square foot for square foot. So that educational plan, as I said, took over 6 months to do for 905. We have to start the process over and refile an educational plan for a smaller student body, whatever that number would be. And that would not guarantee the same support funding from MSBA.
So it's not purely variable, but it's semi-variable.
Correct. Okay. Question number 5. What is the cost per student and per square foot in comparison to other recently completed high school projects, looking to determine the reasonableness of the $140 million proposed costs? Okay, if you go on the MSBA website, they have listed since 2010 every project that has been built, the cost per square foot of those projects. So I looked up Monomoy, which was done in 2013. Their cost per square foot was $294. Cape Cod Tech in 2017 is $414. The STEM school, Dearborn School in Boston was $471. That was done 2 years ago. That was 2018. 17, 18. So those numbers change, obviously, per square foot, obviously where you are on the planet in Massachusetts. So as far as the reasonableness of the 140, that's based on our campus, our buildings, and what we need to have done to them, and the number of kids and the number of square footage that we need to include, not only new construction, but renovation construction. So the number reasonableness per square foot is kind of hard to determine because it's a combination of new construction and renovations. The schools I mentioned are all new construction. It's a different process, it's a different animal, and they're a different part of the Commonwealth. On the other side of the bridge, things are a lot less expensive, as we know. And even the professionals we have commented a couple of times how they are surprised at how little Cape Cod gets for support with regards to state funding for a lot of different things. But that's where we are, and that's how we come up with the cost. The $140 million, again, is a cap on the project. And we will continue to refine that process, which is where we are today. Starting September 1st, we have been doing a schematic design process, and that means the staff, administration have been looking at the spaces that we originally filed with Commonwealth, and we tweak the spaces, because spaces means square footage means dollars. Starting October 16th, we have a facilities working group that's gonna sit with all the architects and go through all the buildings, space by space, and generate costs, or estimated costs for the systems, heating, ventilation, windows, roofs, whatever it's gonna take to put up a building, wall systems. So those costs will also be fed into the cost estimate, and that will be refined for a presentation in November and a submission to MSBA in December. Okay,
Can we pause for just 1 second? Because I do have a different list of questions that I thought you had
I
submitted.
think the list is the same as reorganized, all the same questions. I think Greg may have gotten the copy before you reorganized the list. It is the same list.
There was one additional one, which was with regard to town voting.
Right, that was sent separately, which was sent to the group. Why don't we let them go through?
That's
and-
fine. I just wanted to make sure we don't have two
Right.
very different lists. 'Cause
Right, no,
there are
we had
two
the same
questions that I've already-
list, but you're getting it out when you reorganized the list for me.
Yeah, and
I may have not gotten that one to Greg.
okay.
But it's all the same number of questions. We have all the same number of questions, which is 21.
21, yeah.
Yep, so we're all at the same number. It's just we may be in a little different order.
Okay, my number 6, it says, what's the difference between proposed Nauset project versus a completed Monomoy project? The difference, first of all, in the question is that one is finished, Monomoy, and we're at the proposed part of the project. If I could go back in time and look at Monomoy's project at this phase of where they were, schematic design, I could give you a better comparison, but right now, their project is different. Their project was set, again, their enrollment was set by MSBA, and their reimbursement costs were set by MSBA. Their enrollment was set at 700, along with the caveat that Monomoy was told by MSBA that they needed to include the 8th grade in the high school to increase the amount of students in the program to offset the cost that MSBA would pay for a high school. So that's what Monomoy did. We have, again, worked with MSBA for 905, and we're in the process of developing a project. And that development will work for the next 6 to 8 months, and we'll come to the towns in the spring with a revised cost estimate based on, as I said, the defining of the project as we move forward, and that's what we'll be asking the towns to support. That support will be for a schematic design concept. There are no engineering plans, there's no engineering that's going on, we don't have the money for that. We have a feasibility-funded study, and that's all we have at this point. And that'll get us through the point where we have schematic design that we can submit to the Commonwealth and submit to the towns with a cost estimate that'll be refined, and that'll be our best estimate as to where we are in the process. John, please.
I think the other thing we need to understand is Monomoy was in completely new construction, where in the high school, we're taking advantage of renovation and new construction, but it was a whole new building. And I do remember when we were looking at a new facility up at the high school, the reimbursement was not as high because we are reusing and remodeling some of the existing structures. If that answers some of the question as well.
Clarification,
Go ahead, Pete.
just a clarification, wasn't Monomoy like a pre-designed school?
Peter, you're exactly right. It was in what they called the model program. And so we know it in the business as being Ashland High School. That was the original model that was designed. And then Monomoy looked, I'm sure, at a variety of model schools at that time and chose that model. And there's a small percentage of the opportunity to switch the plan. And that's where the savings comes in terms of getting the plans at a discounted rate. And, yeah, so but that program, the model program, no longer is in existence. So they don't do that anymore. Whitman-Hanson was a model. If you've been up in the Whitman-Hanson, that was a model school. And they had at one time, I think, 6 model schools that you could go look at, see if it fit the needs of your district and get into that program specifically. That's not the case anymore.
Thank you.
Frank?
Was there an issue as it relates to Monomoy around choice students as well? You mentioned that the state came back to them and said, no, you have to include 800 students in order to get, you have to include 8th grade in order to get your enrollment up to 700 students. Was the state basically saying to them that they weren't building a big enough high school for the state, in the state's opinion, that's why they had to add that other grade? Or did they have the same opportunity that any other school district would be, in other words, to accept more choice students? Do they have a significant component of choice students in Monomoy?
So, just to bring it all together, for a sizable amount of time, all of the high schools on the Cape have been involved in school choice. There was a time in this district when we first got into it that Chatham was taking a number of middle school students from Nauset. And it eventually was a benefit to Chatham, and eventually those kids were all coming back to us to come to the high school. I can tell you that one of the issues relative to the choice question was, for Nauset now, we have a significant number of students who come in from either Chatham or Howard. We also were drawn into this analysis of what happens when Monomoy gets built. They were in a position to, in order, as Greg alludes to, is to get close to that number of 700. They weren't sure these kids were coming back because of a new building being built in their home district. And therefore, the request, I believe, for the 8th graders to come up to the high school. Matter of fact, I think it's safe to say to you that Nauset Regional High School, I believe, is the only high school that is still operating as a 9 through 12 school.
Oh.
And the reason for that is, over time, with the choice issues and demographic issues, almost all of our schools on the Cape at the high school level have brought their 8th graders up. Nauset was concerned because here's this brand-new building being built. Would these students go back? And we were very conservative about any building project or any renovations being done to the high school because we weren't sure what happened. What we came to understand was that those students in choice from those communities stayed with us. They didn't go back. And so choice is I'm sure we're gonna get into some discussions about choice at some level. But there's a reason that all of the high schools are involved in choice, and there's a reason why I have to believe that some of you riding around Cape at times are hearing ads, radio ads on the radios relative to families considering other high schools. And it's because of the robust program that we're all trying to develop for our students and being able to maintain it with the size of student body that you need to have that happen. So.
Okay, my next question is, number 7 on my sheet was, what would be the cost to build or renovate Nauset Regional High School in a way to support only the expected enrollment from the 4 member towns whose taxpayers are paying for it? That's a crystal ball question. I'm not evading it. I just can't give you a number. We have a cost estimate to renovate the existing campus for code increase, for code compliance, and that number is $91 million. But it doesn't include an updated education plan. And as I pointed out to the building committee Monday night, it did not include moving the lockers and shower rooms and team rooms out of the basement of the high school, which is a code violation. That's 10,000 square feet of space that would need to be added someplace at a different elevation. That number was not in that $91 million. So, the only stab I'm gonna take at is that to do the high school for the kids who are there now is $91 million plus. And I'm not gonna be held to that because it's a guesstimate in left field. What are the impacts from choice, churro?
It's a question that has a lot of it needs
Why
a
don't we-
lot further discussion.
Right, so let's have that at the end.
What are the impacts of choice, churro, Provincetown, International Baccalaureate students plus it minus delta with the building size and construction cost of the project? Again, it goes to the number of students, and which generates the education plan, which generates the size of the project. So, they're all included in 905, and moving forward, that's what we're building for. And again, if the school committee wants to revisit that, administration wants to revisit that, then that gets brought down to the building committee, because we are doing a project based on what we were instructed to do along with MSBA. And that also would take in a change in the stature of the process with MSBA, and because they're our partners in all this. So that's the only answer I can really give to that, on this one.
So I just, for the board's information, the International Student Program was one that I would say probably going back 12 to 15 years ago. There was a flurry of activity around a couple of state agencies that were formed to work with schools to bring in students from foreign countries for a year of study and for a tuition. And so we were anxious to begin. We were very concerned about the diversity on the campus at that time. We were pretty much what we were. And so we participated in that program. We were one of the first schools in the state to do that. And it was very, very successful for us. I mean, we were able to, at one time, and you'll be getting early next week, or probably the next time we meet, we as you know, we go off our October 1 enrollments, and you'll get the background information on this entire program from Truro to Provincetown to the choice programs and the International Student Program. But at one point, we were robust with this. We were bringing in 12 to 14 to, at one time, I think we got as high as 17 students. Agencies were doing the work for us. We were putting them into homestays where families actually received a stipend for that. And it was going fantastic. And it appeared to be so robust at some point. We were even talking about, would this grow someday into a dormitory and things like that. What happened was that these agencies expanded nationally, and the numbers of students that we could depend upon in terms of being interested in bringing just dwindled. And quite honestly, for us to move forward with the International Student Program in the future, Dr. Alsasser, I hope you have an opportunity to hear him, and he's our new high school principal, comes from a private school background, and we would look more to the private school model of bringing international students in. The good news was during some of our budget times and so forth, we were able to take care of, at that time, moving into the technology world and iPads and so forth. We were using the international student money for those purposes. We often say the international students are helping our kids have technology devices, and it was true. The Truro and Provincetown situation, I want to be pretty clear in terms of where we stand on this. Actually, at the table here tonight, John and Chris and I were the negotiating team that worked with both communities. And we recognize the demographic challenges going forward, and in many cases, as soon as Provincetown High School shut down, many of their students, from a distance standpoint, were coming to us anyways. And likewise with Truro, in our middle school and high school programs without a high school as well. There's a whole interesting piece about choice versus tuition agreements and the difference in terms of the funding. But we have set a new contract in place. We were aware of looking at some number that every student represented from a capital cost, quite honestly. Across the entire student body, that number was $418. And we also were fully aware of our costs transportation-wise, and we're happy to have them continue to do their own transportation back and forth after school and special education. There are also a number of pieces of the special education piece that are guaranteed that if we have additional costs for either school's students, they're on the hook for that dollar amount. We don't have any investment in having to pay for any other further services going forward. So, and that number has been consistent for us across the board for a number of years. Their enrollment is pretty consistent with what we're seeing in our own district, and the vast majority of the students are coming into the system as tuition students.
Next question is kind of dovetailed. If Truro and Provincetown join the region, what would be the impacts to the 4 existing towns? And also, could there be displacement of choice, infusion into the system? If so, what is the potential reduction?
So I guess I'll take that. As Tom said, we did have an initial conversation with Truro and Provincetown, and we've agreed, the 3 entities, to continue the conversation. But obviously, if Truro and Provincetown were to join the region, the impact to the 4 existing towns would be basically spreading both operating and capital costs over the 2 additional towns within the region as percentages of students being sent to the district. As Tom just alluded to, a good majority of both Truro and Provincetown high school students come to our district anyway as a result of the tuition agreement. So at this point in time, I don't see how it would impact or displace the choice infusion. I think we're talking a handful of students if they were to join the region that would be coming to the high school that currently aren't coming to the high school. That's question number 9.
Okay.
We can just kind of clarify, I mean, I think the point of that question, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may, is to explore the idea that they would be an equity partner and not just a tuition partner.
No,
The point is that, that it costs so much to educate a student, and then there's this big piece called the debt. And the tuition, is a significant amount relative to school choice, but it still doesn't include that.
Well, that,
Piece of debt.
I'm sorry, through the chair, that would be the big difference if they were to come into the region. They would share operating and capital debt in part of the payment, and it would be structured, I would assume, same percentage of students, just like Brewster and the other 3 towns.
Part of the motivation also was that the MSBA offers increased percentages of what they would pay if you regionalized farther. So when it began, we said we should look and see if we can, we're here, we've all got, challenge systems. It would be nice if we could, expand and work together. But in getting feedback from MSBA, they would not have, if it happened right away, they would not have given us better percentages, or more, paid for more of the project. So it kind of slowed down that process, but we still have continued on with the discussion, just in mind that it would be better, we would better educate the kids down here, so.
I hope that answers the question.
I guess the answer that I think that I'm hearing is, yes, it would spread the debt out further if we were to do that, but we haven't done that.
Well,
It wasn't part of the agreement with them,
with
Truro and P-Town, and
Well,
They-
as
they
as
don't
Tom,
want-
as Tom stated, well, I can go back before Tom, when Dr. Hoffman was superintendent, and we started talking about tuition agreements with the 2 towns and the high school closing up at Provincetown. They were, the 2 towns were emphatic about not paying for past debt. in previous tuition agreements. And one of the things that Dr. Hoffman and the school committee at the time wrestled with is a fear that the committee had that with Monomoy coming online, that a town would get a tuition agreement with Monomoy and then send their students to Nauset via choice. So initially, and I think I've been on the committee long enough, I've heard some of the concerns about how the contracts were structured in the past, but we were looking at, getting Provincetown students coming in as a tuition agreement so we can be able to charge a higher number than the $5,000 the state formula allows. But this time around, what we ended up doing is we looked at the annual capital costs that the 4 towns contribute, equate that value to, per student, and we built that into the contract. So that's a big difference from the past contracts, that we have a little bit of money coming in that addresses the annual capital at the high school. But yes, if they were to come into the region, which is still very far away, very undetermined, it was a great conversation we had, but they are as proud of their schools as they should be, as we are of ours. So it's a matter of trying to work out what would be the best way for, if they're interested, how they would join the union, but join the region, excuse me. But that is years down the road, and it's a long, long process.
Well, thank you. That was a very thorough answer.
Larissa?
Just one quick question. I'm hearing in there that you're in negotiations for new tuition prices with those towns, is that correct?
We were.
You were, and you've just closed it without divulging it, so that number that we have been paid, which we did some analysis with, could be a different number now.
Yeah, that's included in the.
Just
I believe the
possible.
future
That's the
payments are correct
Okay.
that Mr. Young, Mr. Young put together, yeah.
Oh, okay, so
Bob is
that
fine.
new,
I think the
number we
question
have.
was on previous contract amounts in the years.
Okay.
And we can confirm those numbers if you want them after that.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, thank you.
Okay. Number 10 on my list is what would the annual operating cost be for a school built to support only the expected enrollment from the 4-member towns whose taxpayers are paying for it, in parentheses, to be compared with the current projected operating costs?
Can I take this one?
Go ahead.
I gave my little opening talk because this type of question. I am in no way going to support a construction project that is going to impact the educational experience of our kids from the 4 towns. And part of that educational experience is the larger and robust enrollment that we had. And it goes back to what I talked about, part-time teachers, trying to get quality help to the towns. So even if we were to construct a building for the 600-odd students from the 4 regional towns, I don't really even want to go down that road, because it's going to impact the educational program of the kids. And that's why I started tonight with telling you where the school committee was coming from as far as the 904. We will not be able to offer the type of AP programs, the IB programs that are just getting up and running, and all the other programs, classes like jewelry making, guitar, woodworking, the metal shops. And I can hear my father in the background saying, "Oh, teach them to read and write." The 4 hours and all of that good stuff. But it's all about making sure that the school provides programs to encourage and encompass all the demographics of a student. So if they're not there for reading and arithmetic, they're there for band, they're there for drama, they're there for the jewelry making. You get them into school. And if we go back to a lower-sized, regional-only kids, we're going to lose that opportunity no matter how much money we throw at the program. And I don't think how much money we can throw at the program will be supported by our taxpayers anyway. So I got a real problem in going down that road, but I don't know if I can
I
answer
think
that.
part of I think a lot of these questions are just to get clarity on things. I don't think it's a position statement. It's to understand.
Well,
why the
that one's very
direction.
near and dear to my heart, because I think
John,
building a
John,
student.
John, I've got 3 kids that went through the Nauset Regional System, so I think I'd trump.
And I
most of
appreciate
the-
your passion on that,
Right.
actually.
It's
And,
very high up there.
Right, and
I
I
appreciate
think the bottom line, the under point here is nobody on that side of the table wants to risk the program that exists now and its value. And that's the bottom line. And we've had great success.
And I'll return the favor. I think this finance committee and the Board of Selectmen over the past several years have done nothing but support us. So we appreciate it as well, so.
Can I just make one clarifying point? And I'm sure that I said this a few meetings ago, which is, I'm not trying to make policy recommendations or come out on one side or another in constructing the spreadsheet that I constructed and constructing some of the questions that I contributed to this list. But I think for transparency, it's important that people understand the dollars and cents that go into providing that program so that we can choose as an electorate and as a taxpayer base, does that make sense? That's pure and simple. I'm a numbers guy. I want to see, here's the number and here's the benefit, here's the other number and here's what we'd lose. Then I can come to a decision on, do I support it or do I not support it?
I totally agree with that approach, and that's your job. You're on the finance committee. But when we sit here on television and say it's going to be, less dollars to construct a 600-student building versus a 904 building, anybody that is a dollar and cents is going to say, well, let's build the 600. Well, I look at it completely different. I think it is imperative for these 4 towns to educate the students from the 4 towns to the best of our ability. And the program that we currently have and the program where it's headed is going to do that. So when people throw around it's going to be X number of dollars to build 600 for a school for 600 people, or X plus to build a school for 900, you make the choice very easy if you're looking at dollars and cents. But it's not just dollars and cents.
And I think, I hope you heard me that I also asked what's the program then that is there and what's the programming that's lost, not just the dollars and cents, but to understand, okay, what's the cost of those programs?
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Greg?
Okay, we get to that question. It says, what programming would be cut if we built a smaller school? Why would it be cut? And lack of participation or cost? If it is related to participation, this raises the question as to why we would build facilities to support other towns or choice students. If it is related to cost, what would be the cost to offer this programming even with a smaller school? That's your response.
Okay. A couple of things around this topic. One, I know that at Nauset Regional High School into this school year, we're receiving revenues in the area of $1.1 million. If you were to take that and look at a staffing standpoint, and there's all kinds of ways of looking at it, I would figure that number would represent 21 teaching positions. The next piece I'd like to add to this conversation, because it has a theme through all of the questions, it seems, is this packet of information is the creation of another master schedule. And let's talk about a master schedule so we're all thinking the same way. I said to it just briefly, at Nauset Regional High School, students make their course selections. They're involved in 7 courses over a 2-day period. And then we go about building a schedule that can meet those needs. I can tell you, computers have been a fantastic tool in building master schedules because we are able to use a programming. And I work with Robin Walker. I want to give her credit. If she's watching the show from Sandwich, I wanted to know. I've worked with her. I was a high school principal at Nauset for 20 some odd years and cut my teeth as a high school principal in other states. So the key in understanding is that the technology allows us generally to try and get to 96 or 97% of the selections of a school of over 1,000 students getting their choices. And then we have to do it by hand, all right? So, Dr. Osasa, who was our principal last year, went about the work of basically doing the same exact exercise. He built a master schedule. What I did with, working with Robin Walker, who I worked with 20 years on schedules and so forth, I took that schedule, and then we added another column to it, and that column was school choice students. Every option that we offer students, whether it's 9A English, whether it's biology B, we went through every single section, and we took out the school choice students. What's that do to that number? Okay, it was 579 pages of data to filter through. I can tell you that at this juncture and looking at this, now I haven't really reported this to the school committee. I'm only going to go so deep with this. I would feel very comfortable tonight telling you that I would think at minimal we would lose at least 75 sections of instruction. Okay, and we could debate on what does it mean to lose. Our board has a policy of understanding when they see our schedule, do we have any sections over 25 and do we have any sections under 10, and make decisions from there. And I'm looking at that 10 number or below, okay? And the issue is its impact, it's across all subjects, it's across all levels, and it's across the electives as well as the required courses. And the interesting piece with it is that, and I'll only go a little bit deeper because I've been working on this for days, and I'm comfortable sharing this information here this evening on television. But I can tell you that we have had a robust language program in terms of the numbers of languages that we've offered. And they can be, in some cases, get thin, quite honestly. And I was noticing that in some cases, in French 2, for instance, we would have dropped under 10. Would we carry it forward or not? But that decision is huge, because if we drop level 2 because it only has 8 students, it could shut the whole French program down eventually. And that's a preliminary analysis of this work that we've done. But it begins, I think, Bob, to answer some of the questions about, so when we do those things, what is the outcome of it? And that's what I can share with you tonight. It will be, and I think John makes a really interesting point. The interesting piece about part-time teachers is that if you were to downsize, drama would be a perfect example. And drama is a small department for us, but a robust one. We have been state champions a couple of years with great acting coming out of that school. The issue ultimately is if we are unable to carry our teachers teach 5 sections, if for some reason we were to use that formula, and because we pull the choice kids out of their selections into drama, and it drops that down to 60%, I'm not so sure that an employee can work at 60% and rent a home here for us going forward. And that's really the point that John is hitting home really hard at. And that's why in so many cases, keeping part-time employees, and particularly if they're moving into our community to take these positions, is almost non-existent today. So I know it's not a complete analysis for you, but you can see that we're going to be continuing to look at this information and give you a deeper understanding as we go forward. Thank you.
Next question is, what is the total cost to educate a student per year, current and projected 5 years in the future? please also address this in the context of the analysis that was prepared by the Brewster Finance Committee that shows that the cost per student for the 4 member towns is about $29,000 per year and rises from this baseline.
So I'm going to ask Giovanna, who is our financial director, to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about what we know about our per pupil cost and things like this.
Thank you. What the district utilizes is what we report to the state annually. The end-of-year report where we detail all of the expenses for the district, which would be the region and the 4-member town schools. And that is the number that we utilize. So whenever we look at per pupil costs, that's the number that we use. That's on the DESI's website. If you go onto the DESI website, you can get all sorts of data. When I went up to pull the data, I went 2016 to 2018. 2019 has not been posted, as we just sent our information in yesterday. That'll take a couple months before they post it. But that's the number that we utilize. It includes the in-district full-time students, as well as the students that we send out of district via the special needs students that go to other programs, the students that choice out, as well as students that attend charter schools. Okay. What it doesn't include is the residents that go elsewhere, because those students, say from Brewster, they go somewhere else via school choice. Those districts report them on their end-of-year reports. Okay.
All right. Back in a box, Greg. Not batter's box.
All right, here we go.
Use a lot of, now that the Red Sox are done, we're using a lot of baseball.
Number 13, the state reported cost to educate each student in 2017 for Nauset Regional was $25,000 per year. If our analysis is correct, that the cost to member towns taxpayers is about $29,000. That's a major difference. That $8,000 per year difference multiplied by the number of towns enrollment is 624 equals nearly $5 million per year in potential savings, which would go a very long way in supporting the debt service on this new school. That's above my pay grade.
Which question are we on?
13?
13.
I tried to go through the analysis at the end of this package, and I had trouble following the numbers, and one of my biggest problems is that I couldn't get it to print on one sheet, so I was dealing with 5 sheets. I honestly would like to go and discuss that, with the person. Bob, was this you? Okay. And understand where you got the 29, and then I think we can answer that question.
Yeah, I'm happy to go through it line by line.
Yep.
Yeah, and I've got some things in here that I had assumptions that I needed to get some tweaks, but I think the number is pretty good.
I want to make a suggestion, because I want to move, keep us moving.
No, I'm not looking to
along.
go through the numbers tonight.
No.
I'm ready.
John.
I know you are. I'm not.
We're not going through the numbers tonight. I got to get to bed at some point.
Maybe it'll put you to sleep.
Frank and Bob, seeing that you guys have worked on the financials, I'll kind of get you in touch with John and Tom and Giovanna and set up a time you guys can all get together,
Yeah,
and then
that'd be good.
report back to us, so we can.
Because we'd like to understand the numbers before we answer that type of question, to be honest with you. Thank you.
So next question is, what's the maximum capacity with the current building project? I'm assuming maximum capacity of students. It's kind of implied, so the maximum capacity of students is 905. That's what the project's gonna be built for. That's a pretty straightforward answer, I think.
I also want to understand, you got 9 people putting in all the questions together, and so you get a little overlap, so
Okay.
I appreciate that. But Frank?
So if I could
So
just,
just
let
go,
Frank-
Frank, sorry.
Just behind the question is, so right now, there's 947 students at the high school, I think.
I can only give you, Frank, I
Yeah,
can give you today's.
based upon the last October's enrollment data for this year. So clearly, the high school has been operating at different capacities, student capacities, over the last 5 years. There's no constraint to that continuing to happen going forward after this construction project, right? You're not locked in a ceiling of 905 students a year. That's the question.
No.
No. So it could go higher, it could go lower.
But the core spaces are being built for 905 students.
Yes.
Based on the state standards. We gotta go back to that.
The new state standards.
So the new state standards soon to be changed to the new state standards at some point.
Mike, if I
Yes,
could
sir.
just add something to that. This is a good segue to tour of the campus. One of the things that was very evident to those of us that met with the MSBA when they came down to tour the campus during the soy phase, was there was a group of 6 or 7 of them, an engineer, architect, politician, administration, some educational people, a whole group of them. And they toured the school while the kids were in school. And to a person, like I said, there were 6 or 7 of them, to a person, they were absolutely blown away of the program, the level of programs the high school was offering, and doing it in hallways, in stairwells, in old locker bays. I mean, you've heard the story before. And I think that was one of the things that opened the door for Nauset to be invited after only 2 years of applying for the SOI. So I'm going to segue to my challenge or my request. I would ask you all to take advantage of the high school tours while the school is open. So for those of you who have not seen the school, I think it's imperative that you see the school in action, and you will see some of the things that we've been talking about tonight and the challenges we face. So I was waiting for my segue, so I got it. So that's the last I heard of it.
Okay. Okay, next question is, what can the school committee and administration of Nassau Regional High School, as well as the middle school, commit to in writing to Brewster as reductions in annual operating costs once debt is incurred for the Nassau Regional High School project to assist Brewster in finding the $2.5 million in funding each year it will need if the Nassau Regional High School project is approved as it stands?
I'll take that one, too.
Yep.
One of the things that goes back to 14-15, when we started talking about the statement of interest, we met with the town managers and the town finance folks. And the reason that we developed or thought about the SOI, as I said earlier, was that from a school committee point of view, I don't think it would be prudent to keep coming back to the taxpayers on a revolving door of looking for debt exclusion or large purchases. So, again, speaking as one committee member, and Chris can back me up on this as well, but, I think the school committee is committed to the high school project, and we're concentrating the annual capital payments that the 4 towns contribute to concentrate on the middle school and central office. And I don't see why that would not continue. I think I don't know if it's in writing or not, but I'm just said it on TV, so. And that's my commitment, and I think Chris concurs.
It's been in the plan. We've been doing that. It's been in the plan for a couple of years now.
Yep.
And will continue to be as long as I'm involved.
Okay. Next question is, will fees/charges for other programs and users be adjusted, and can this income be applied to the debt?
I was unsure on what you meant by fees or charges. We do have a facility use fees on all of our facility buildings, and any money that's appropriate to that is required to go back into the use of the building upkeep capital. And the school does not, and as far as I'm concerned, should not charge any fees for sports or anything like that, if that's what the question was surrounding.
No, okay, all right, so that's my question, I gotta come out of the box, okay? I gotta come out from hiding. So there's other outside use of the facility. There's a summer program done for psychiatrists and psychologists and all that. That's a very, very good program. Have happened over the years to meet a number of these people,
The
and it's
Gestalt
very,
Institute.
very attractive.
Yes.
And there's actually there was an article in the Boston Sunday Globe a number of years back. There was a partnership. They split, and they both end up doing the program. So now that you have a new facility, and that's a true outside user that is making that has a business entity is making money out of that, and that we have now a physical plant that has cost us more money, that we're into it. So is that gonna be reflected on that and other outside potential users? Now, I know, recreation and other student-driven things would not apply to that because you wanna create the opportunity for the activity. I wanna make sure I get that on, so I don't get nasty grams, that, as opposed to the kids hanging out and causing trouble, they're in a good recreational program, the tournaments that are done during the winter months and so on and so forth. So and then there may be an opportunity to draw some others in now that you got a new complex.
So I think, Mike, that's an excellent example. And let's be quite honest, we have struggled over the last few years to have consistent air conditioning in the 4 rooms that they use at this point. And we know with the state, and Alex, the son of Gil Levin, they've been with us for a long time. I've been around them 25 years. I'm sure that when we have a state-of-the-art facility that they can even expand their program and opportunities with, there will be a whole different cost to that program and partnership. They want a top-notch facility, and they know it's going to take top dollar to be able to have that opportunity, but they're committed to the campus style. And many of their visitors, they had thousands of people come there this summer, and they love the environment that it's set in. And so I think it's safe to say that will be renegotiated as the facilities come online, and it will be far more lucrative for the district than it is right now.
And then just to close out on that, is there an opportunity to apply that to the debt? Because we're incurring a major debt. That's very different. I understand the philosophy is very good to apply that money to maintenance and capital renewal, and that's a very good philosophy. But now we're in a different world with this major debt.
Through the chair, I believe we're required to put it back into the building because of law. The law tells us to, but we can confirm that and get back to you. Obviously, if we have some flexibility, I think it's something we can discuss, but I don't think we have the flexibility. Thank you.
This question is, the project reflects a 4% contingency. How was this determined? The project cost really has more than 4% contingency. I'm not sure how that number is generated, 4% of what numbers. The question I always ask is, what's the percentage and number of? The cost estimate has contingencies for a mid-course correction, if you will, because it's a 30-month construction of almost $6 million. There's a contingency for construction, there's a contingency for, it goes on and on. I quickly added up, it's almost 10% of the 140 has some contingency built into all over the place. Because of, right now, it's a cost estimate, so we're being very conservative about where the numbers are going. So partly is the document that I can, at some point, get you folks, if I can get a 11 by 14 color copier. It's a MSBA cost estimate sheets, and it'll run all the numbers based on what we plugged in with the project manager and his cost estimator, and the architect and his cost estimator, 2 different firms, and get you those numbers so we can walk through that. It's almost 5 months old. I was kind of hoping to get the next one in November to you, but I'll get you the baseline one anyway, so you have those numbers. But the contingencies are more than 4% across the board.
Greg, was that I'm not sure I heard you right, is that the contingencies that are built in, are they mandated by the state?
They are built in. The paperwork is the state's, and they have hundreds of line items, and you fill in the line item that that applies to your project. So there's, again, because the construction project is gonna be 30 months, mid-course correction has almost $6 million contingency for that. There's a contingency for construction, contingency for insurance. I mean, it just goes all across the board. Any possibility that something may happen that we haven't found out yet.
We
Again,
put that number in, or the state?
that is a number based on the project manager and his cost estimator and the architect and his cost estimator. So a group
Okay.
of 4 different groups that put those numbers together. They reconcile them like a conference committee for the legislator, and they fill out that paperwork for us.
Okay.
Okay?
And it gets reviewed by the state also.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything we do gets reviewed by 2 lovely staff members up in Boston. We're making sure we do everything correctly.
The
And they're very
template.
persnickety about what I sign, what we send up to there, okay? It says what percentage of annual escalators was factored into the project to offset increased cost of completion? Again, the one I just mentioned, there's one for halfway through the project, of roughly $6 million is cost estimated for that. If we change the timeframe of the project by refining the schematic design, and we can bring the cost of the length of the project down, then that'll be reflected also in a reduction in that escalation clause.
What, is there a percentage?
Percentage of,
The escalator annually? Because
there's a mid-course correction escalator, that's, as I said, almost $6 million.
what percentage of the project is that?
At that point, it'd be 50% of the project. Because
No.
we're assuming that we're halfway through.
Wouldn't it be 6 million of the 140, so that's
Yes.
the percentage?
Okay. My concern is just the cost of product and everything that's going on, that enough is built in there, because
Yeah.
the taxpayer is gonna,
Yep.
if we're short, there's a
The cost is
shortfall,
built in.
It'll be ugly.
Well, and again, it would be ugly for us because we have set the cap. The 140 is the cap. We have to live with that. And as we told the state, we've told you folks multiple times, every 4 towns, we are not exceeding $140 million, period.
Well, that was my question, how much?
But there's,
Do you feel there's enough in there then?
Yes.
For what's facing us over an unpredictable next 4 or 5 years? Well,
Okay.
then-
We had a meeting in June, and we talked about construction management at risk. That premium is also built into this number. That premium is $5.9 million. So if we decide to do construction management at risk, that stays in. If we decide not to do construction management at risk, the $5.9 million comes out. So, but the contingency also includes that number that's staying there. So it's a contingency based on a lot of things that are in the program that may not be there 5 months from now.
So you'll come in under budget.
That would be great. We'll find out.
with no surprises.
If they copy Cape Cod Tech, we got a winner.
But I mean, one of the benefits of the process that we're in is that we're involved with the state, and this is what they do. So there's a lot of, maybe a little more minutia that's required, but as a result, it's complete. And so that you can have some, I mean, they build 18 projects a year, I mean, something along those lines, this group that we're working with. And so we had to tie in with them in order to get somebody else to help pay for this process. So it's, you put up with it, but it's a good thing, and they keep us honest, keep our OPMs honest, keep the architect honest. So it's just, it works for everybody and works for the towns. And that's why the program's been in existence for quite a while, so.
Okay, next question is, was the project value engineered? And if so, what was the dollar savings? Again, I don't have anything engineered yet. I have a cost estimate based on, okay, 4 walls, cost X amount of dollars per wall. So there's nothing been engineered. And that will be part of the process at some point when we have engineering plans,
Okay.
okay?
Your costs are based on feasibility, not,
Correct. What changes, if any, can be made in the configuration of Oswego High School project at this point in the process? For instance, could the $90 million estimated as the cost of correcting code violations be used to build a new freestanding high school in the area? If not, why not? And if yes, why was this option not selected as the preferred option instead of the $140 million option? So I'm gonna take that question from the bottom up. We're required to look at all options from MSBA. One of them is to build a new building on a different site. Months ago, we asked all 4 towns if there was a piece of property in any of the 4 towns of 40 acres or more that could accommodate a brand-new high school. The answer came back from 4 towns. No one had 40-acre lot that could be used for a high school. There was no 40-acre lot that could be bought for a high school. So for us to go out and ask the towns to buy a piece of land to move the high school, really was kind of a non-starter. Plus, as I explained to folks, the region agreement has a clause that Nassau Regional High School will be so far from the intersection of Route 6 and Samoset Road, which is where the high school is today. So the first thing you have to do is ask 4 towns' permission to move the high school. And so that's that part of that question. So we did look at that. And it was a non-starter, just because of land acquisition costs, and that type of thing. So, and the question is, for instance, could the $90 million estimated as code correcting violation be used to build a new freestanding high school? Well, I guess the roundabout answer could be yes, but $90 million wouldn't build you a freestanding high school. We have a freestanding high school on the current property that we have a cost estimate of $151 million. And that is not a hard number, because we stopped the estimators and professionals from working on that number any further when we saw what the number was gonna be and what the impacts to the impacts to construction would be. We went over that last time I was here, Endangered Species Act, moving water mains, the whole 9 yards. So we didn't go there. So we have, again, chosen and working with the Commonwealth to renovate 60+% of the current facility and adding 40,000 square feet, give or take a few hundred square feet of new construction, with the parentheses, as I said a while ago, that 10,000 of that 40,000 is simply to move the lockers and showers out of the basement of the gymnasium. So a net increase to the campus is 30,000 square feet for now. As I said, we're refining those numbers as well. So that's where we are with that program. And last question for my list was, please explain why the commitment was made to work with the existing school campus layout, described as a California college campus model, which requires students to exit and enter different buildings throughout the campus and presents security challenges associated with multiple access points throughout the campus. Do you like that one?
So let's take the security piece. We know that going forward with this project, we have heard from many, many people that security must be improved, and it will be. This will be a secure campus, that we will control the flow of students on and into the courtyards and back out, okay? That's going to be accomplished. And even when you begin to look at the model that we've chosen, we control the flow of the traffic by where we put the parking spaces, and that will be in the front of the building that will get away from this circular drive that students can park anywhere they want or drive through the campus. The other piece to this question is about the California style. I can tell you that I've been in 3 different states as a building administrator, and this is my 4th stop. It is the greatest strength of this campus. I'm telling you, many of you probably know if your children have come through it, eventually we had moved to the block schedule. Our students take 4 85-minute classes in a day. And they have 12 minutes of passing time, and they have a lunch. The idea that they come out of their buildings and move around and get fresh air is amazing on the impact of students. Listen to this fact. I dealt with as many as 1,200 students at its highest point, and I've dealt with tens of thousands of students on that campus. Only once was I even drawn close to a physical altercation at that school. What? Why? Because that courtyard doesn't get into the bumping and grinding and pushing and shoving of lockers like a typical school that I ran in different states. The kids come out, they find their space, and within that whole, if you were to go there and go on the top of the auditorium roof, you would be amazed at how many groups of kids find themselves. Nobody's bumping, nobody's hitting into each other. Matter of fact, we don't even use a bell system because they only pass 3 times in a day. And they have a general idea, the administration's out there anyways, and they simply go into class. The idea of getting fresh air is something that I would encourage for every school to find a way to do it, because it's had a huge positive impact on that school. I get it. Someone's gonna say, so what happens when it rains? And quite honestly, I tell them, and my children experience it too, they just go faster, okay? There are some kids who are proud to say, in a school year, they ate outside every day. So it is a strength, not a weakness. Thank you.
All right, so I cross-referenced the questions And I think we got everyone covered except for which is on the revised list of number 1, which is what is the intention with regard to bringing the funding of this project before the 4-member towns? Where you stand right now, so.
So
We-
Jim-
And we're lucky we got the chair of the school committee.
Yeah, you can go right ahead, buddy.
Let's tell you what we decided. We haven't decided anything yet.
Right.
And the discussion really hasn't started. We've just gotten what the impact would be of a 20-year, 25-year, 30-year bond for it. And in turn, the next step will be deciding, what method. We're kind of,
Okay. All right.
Mike, I just want to make sure I add this. On the 16th, we plan to be meeting with each of the town managers and finance people for a discussion to hear from each of the respective communities in terms of what they're thinking or what ideas they would like us to consider and things like that. So that's a big meeting for us coming up.
Okay. I will open up for questions from the committee. So we will start. Honey?
I think that it has been most helpful to hear you talk tonight. Probably for me, this was more helpful than the previous presentations that I've sat through. I thought it was very helpful to tour. I don't think you can possibly appreciate this project unless you do, and I hope that everybody who's involved in decision-making will do that. I think that to really understand probably most all these questions, the answer really is, and I think you hit on it when you were discussing the programming, is in order for, if I understand it correctly, in order for the region, the district, to really effectively offer the programming and secure the level and quality of teachers it wants to execute the programming, it has to have enough core volume to attract full-time teachers who can then afford to live somewhere in our larger community so they can be present to teach. Is that a correct summary of what
Right on the ball.
I think I heard?
Yep. You said it a lot better than I did.
Well,
Or I.
not much ever comes out of me coherent, so thank you.
Me neither.
So with that understanding, and the fact that programming really drives this whole cost structure, because personnel really drives the structure. People that teach are the ones that really, and support the school infrastructure, are the ones that make up most of the cost. I think that the challenge for all of us is that I think the cost estimate that we're hearing is $3 million a year for debt service. Now that could change depending on, obviously, whether it's 20 years or 30 years and how favorable rates can be and so forth, but kind of working with that as a ballpark. And as I sat in, I think it was the last meeting, I heard our esteemed chairman, who's been around a lot longer than any of us, say that this was the largest project that he can remember coming forward. We're stumped on how we're going to come up with this money, which makes it extremely difficult to move forward. I have to say that with everything I've learned, I wholeheartedly support the project. And I think that while there has not been an engineering phase yet, and that could change in my experience, having done a few projects in the hospital world, things quite a bit, I think that you've made it clear the 140 is your cap and you gotta live with it. So I'm just living with that number and saying, whatever happens in engineering, you're gonna figure it out. I think we've got a problem for us because we're the biggest piece of the pie in Brewster. I think for people like me who believe that you all are extraordinary and have done extraordinary work to figure out the programming and what needs to be there to meet the standards that have been established for the kids in our community, I don't know how the heck we're gonna pay for it. Because I think I'm still looking to figure out what's the cost impact per household. How many of our households are at a level of income where they just can't absorb that? What are we going to do? How are we going to come up with the money? And so that's where I'm at. So I hope that going forward, to the extent that I may sound negative, I am not negative one bit about doing what we need to do for our children to preserve the quality of the programming. I did take time and research how the school is regarded and what kind of awards it's won and where it ranks in this state. And it's darn good. You could say it a lot better than that, but it's darn good. And I think if it were my children, I have 9 grandchildren and a great-grandchild, I am very invested in our future, which is our children. But boy, I'm invested in figuring out where the money's coming from, because that's pretty much what we have to do, whether we're on the finance committee or whatever committee we're on in the town, because we live here and we care. So thank you for coming tonight, because I really did appreciate and could hear much better what you were saying and understand how the process worked to drive the numbers and your challenge of trying to get part-time teachers. I mean, it's hard enough to get full-time qualified people, to get part-time people that could afford to live in the community. You're right, that is a major factor. So thank you, and I will keep trying to figure out how it is in the large world of Brewster here, with no essentially commercial operations to fall back on, as other towns may have. How are we gonna ever come up with this $3 million a year? I just don't know. And if there were any way that we could figure out, I mean, how to do that together, it sure would be helpful. Because that's, for me, what's really, really hitting me hard. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Bill?
I have a question about the education plan. To what extent, as you're building this education plan, do you consult with other school districts, Cape Cod Tech? I guess what I'm really asking is there overlap? And if there is, can we skinny it down?
So I can tell you, I'm a big advocate of our technical program. I know that Bob comes in front of you, and we've been great partners. I think we're the only district that allows the tech to come in and talk to students. I can tell you that we are particularly, matter of fact, Bob was just on the campus. I took him up to Nauset Regional High School last Friday, because in our science areas, we've been working with the autonomous car and drones with payloads of 17 pounds for a few years now. We have a partnership with MIT. And I wanted Bob, knowing that he's going into an autonomous shop with his vehicles and so forth, how could we work together to not necessarily duplicate the programming in the future, but maybe it's housed in one of our 2 schools so that we don't have to duplicate it and both have the same cost. And Bob, I have a lot of respect for Bob, and we agreed that we're looking forward to going to MIT to meet with Bob Shen and the director of the Lincoln Labs and BeaverWorks to form a partnership between his staff and our staff, so that we can keep our costs down and take advantage of it. i.e., for instance, we have, our board members just saw it recently, we have autonomous cars, and we participate in races at the MIT campus over the summer and things like that. We don't need to have our own separate cars. And our kids are learning to break them down and learn the sonar, the radar, and all the other pieces to it. So we need to take advantage of those opportunities to work together, to share. And that's just one example. And I can tell you that it's a little bit off your point, Bill, but we are working together as superintendents across the entire Cape of understanding of the changing demographics on the Cape and what its impact is for all of us. And I think that leads to more robust conversations about how to share what we have, because it isn't all going to be here 20 years from now. And that's just the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I have a very unfair question,
I'm
particularly
not
for-
taking it.
for the building committee. And from the perspective of history, this school was built originally in 1975?
No, the original school campus was built and occupied, the first class graduate was 1972.
72. Okay, so it's almost 50 years ago.
Mhm.
And I understand there was a major renovation between then and now. My question goes to, have we waited too long? And have we incurred a greater cost because we're doing this later than we should have?
The renovation you're speaking of was 23 years ago,
Yep.
1994 through 96, 97. That budget set by the school committee was $10 million. That $10 million bought the existing, what's called N building, which looks different than the rest of the campus. That's 30,000 square feet. We built that at $100 a square foot. We renovated every bathroom on the campus. We installed new water piping. We installed a new well, because the existing well was down gradient from the effluent. We put a new septic system in. We built 3 new ball fields. We redid the track. We put a maintenance building in. And we created the driveway that went around the campus for better fire suppression. So we did a lot with $10 million. What we could not do, the major piece of the project we never could touch, was the heating system, which is original. The piping is original to the campus, and a lot of the piping is buried in the walls and in the concrete slabs, and it has started to fail. We have leaks, we have water puddles, so that needs to be done. It has the original boilers, I think I mentioned last time. Those boilers are 1969 vintage. So they need to be upgraded. The heating fluid has been upgraded twice. We now burn gas. It's not very efficient because the boilers don't burn it very well because they're not designed for gas. So have we waited too long? I would have to say qualified no. I was on the school committee in 2004 through 7. We're the committee that came to the 4 towns and asked for the money that we now present as a separate line item for capital improvements, because we were trying to forestall the types of systems that were failing. And we've done a pretty decent job of it, but at some point, you can't do a boiler renovation in 9 buildings over a campus with $500,000 a year. So we did the best we could with what we had, and here we are with this program, and I think it's the right time for the program, for the school. Financially, I'm not so sure of any different further back. The cost would have been the same across the board, and quite frankly, the last project we did, Brewster, was 49.8% of the program. So it was a little different.
I said it was an unfair question.
No, that's okay.
But it's a sincere one. In previous lives, I've seen school projects that came about and carried a price tag that I thought was excessive, because the town had delayed and waited too long.
Yep.
And they did not attach a reasonable end of life to what they had. And I just want to make sure, believe me, everything I've seen and heard from you folks inclines me to believe that you have done a thorough and professional job of preparing this proposal. And I'm inclined to support it, although I believe it's going to be, as Honey says, very painful for us. But I just want to plant that seed. Even now, as we go through this project and spend $140 million, I would like to know that there is an end-of-life analysis for this project, and that it is sensible and reasonable.
Thank you very much.
Tom, I gotta correct you on one thing. It's Lincoln Lab. There is no S. They're very beholden. It's the largest single department within MIT. and they correct everybody ad nauseum over that. They're dealing with Brainiac, so Pete,
Great. Hey, thank you all for coming, and it's great to kind of, in this kind of environment, get all this out. People want to hear this. But I got a couple questions that are, one is pretty small, but are any of the spaces being planned different from what the MSBA will pay for? For instance, are we building a larger auditorium than what they would allot for 900 students?
The answer is yes. Again, MSB has a formula for everything. So we have established a 905 student body. The auditorium we're planning on build, they will pay 2/3 of that. So they'll pay for a 600 student auditorium. However, we are looking to build a 750 seat auditorium that the local folks came to the building committee months ago and made the case that they needed a venue on the Outer Cape that would allow them to have productions, concerts, other things that they could use the facility for to draw in the crowd, to generate the income we talked about for building use. So it's kind of the circular type of thing. So yes, there are certain things that we are looking at that they will not pay 100%, but they pay a portion thereof. I can remember the other one that sticks in my mind for the education plan was the Marine Science Program, which has been at Nauset for almost 15 years. And they didn't understand what it was in Boston because no other high school has one. So we went up and explained to them what it was and why we're looking for a classroom to do that, because there's a partnership with Woods Hole. I mean, the school has done all kinds of things to, again, keep the students involved. So those are the types of, some of the spaces right off the top of my head that came up that they are questioning. They haven't decided finally that they're gonna not support those. The auditorium, that's pretty much set in stone. The gymnasium, we're not doing a thing, and they're not paying a dime to the gymnasium either, because that's part of their program. So, and we'll identify those costs when we move along, and that'll come back as one of the future meetings as to what we are paying locally based on what the state would not reimburse for their program.
So looking at the overall program being $140 million, and whatever the MSBA will pay, the towns will shoulder the rest. There are a couple things that I think are of interest at this point, which are moving this project quickly to be able to take advantage of the interest rates. And I think we saw Cape Tech do that, borrow quickly to lock it in. So delaying the project, even though there's no hint of interest rates going up, you just never know. I think the second one is more advisory. I think that a longer-term borrowing puts the burden less on, or at least shifts the burden out to some of the newer taxpayers who will be here maybe over 20 years, who will be taking part in this building, and they will shoulder some of that debt. So to spread the debt out further will keep the costs low in the short term for people who, it'll allow for other people to be paying some of that debt in the future. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
And so I think that that's something for you to consider.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, that would go to the question of 20 versus 25 versus 30.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I would suggest longer is better.
Thank you.
But, and I think, I'm very glad you came. I'm very supportive, because we know we have to do something. And I think that you can do 90 million with no help, or you can do 140 and have somebody pay over 30% of it. And then we can get it done. So, anyway, thanks for your efforts tonight.
We'll be back.
Yeah, for the sake of time, I won't reiterate what my colleagues so articulately stated. I just commend you for your hard work and your thoroughness, and I participated, the community I left, from the tour to the approval, and then you're about a year ahead of where we were. We were going into the feasibility. But I understand the gymnastics that they put you through with the templates, and everything has to match up, or, sorry, get in line again. And as Pete mentioned, I guess what I focused on is, at the end of the day, we're gonna have a $91 million problem. And just solving that alone, you may only get half a loaf of what you're displaying a tremendous capability to educate the children, and by some of the awards you've received and the kudos, and you're doing that with a substandard or a dated facility. We used to use the euphemism of deferred maintenance. And you're accomplishing that, so it'll just be amazing what you'll be able to do with a new facility. So, to me, we've got a $9 million gap. We've got a $100 million problem or a potential looming out there, but it hasn't been value engineered. It could come down, and it could come in under project. But you've got a $91 million problem, which, you're gonna turn a lot of local and state authorities loose and say, what do we need to come up to code? And when I ran buildings and operations, that used to scare me to death. The guy comes in and says, well, I want you to bring the electric up to code in your 30-year-old building. And you go, so I think the upside is tremendous, and you've just displayed the talent and ability to provide superior education to people out here at the Cape and retain qualified people. And we all know the challenges it is for people to work here and live here and whatnot. And it was impressive that people there, like Chris, Dr. Alsasser, and a lot of the teachers, they went to high school there. They have that commitment and dedication to we didn't see much of that where I left. There were a few kids I remember when my kids were going through the talk, but there wasn't that kind of dedication. So you've bottled it, you've done it, and I think you guys will knock the cover off the ball. If you get a better facility, it'll just be amazing what you'll be able to achieve. That's all.
Thank you.
So again, thank you. I, as someone who was born and raised here, I always was jealous of the kids who got to go out in the middle of the day to go to class. If I could have chosen to go from DY to NASA in a heartbeat, I would have. I think the one thing that I'm very interested in now is I believe in this, and now we're going to pay for it. We're going to figure out a way to pay for it. So the conversation that you'll be having, and whomever put together the bonding impact analysis, thank you for that. It gives a very clear picture of what it may take to pay for this with different parameters. And I'm with Pete, where take advantage of the rates while we can. Let's not delay. Let's, if we're gonna have to pay for it, because the 140 is a cap and the 91 can only go up. That 91 really isn't a $91 million problem. Yeah. So thank you for all the hard work. Thank you for your analysis, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Bob? Okay, and I would repeat much of what folks earlier said with regard to addressing the questions, spending the time, fielding questions that are not always the easiest to have to try and address. But to be candid, I'm not there yet. I think you started to answer, in particular, some of the detail that I'd be looking for, and Tom, your answer with regard to the number of sections that would need to be cut and how that, I'd love to see how that analysis
Love to get together with
unfolds. And I also don't, in my mind, this isn't a matter of a choice of 90 versus 140. In my mind, I'm still coming around to why not, really what gets cut if you moved it to support strictly the towns that are in the region, 624. And I give kudos to the school for the awards that it's won, but how far back would it really drop it? And are there other 600, 700 student schools that win the same awards and have very similar programming, maybe not all of it, but certainly some of it? And when we get together to go through the analysis, what really sticks with me is the price that my analysis suggests the individual taxpayers, or we're paying for each individual student, that attends from whether it's Brewster, Orleans, Wellfleet, or Eastham, far exceeds choice and far exceeds tuition, the tuition students from either Truro or Provincetown. And that I have a hard time grasping and understanding why we would continue to support that. And that's, so I'm just not there yet, but I think that we can continue our discussions, and I can spend as much time as you want on the analysis that I did, and maybe it's not correct, but I have a hard time finding where the fatal flaw is in it.
I think it's just a matter of, for me, to understand it and
Which
how
is-
you put it
which
together.
is
And that, so a conversation probably resolve that doubt, and not doubt, but question in my mind, and then I can answer it.
That's great.
And I'll also be very, very fair. We may not ever agree on whether 600 or 900. I know, you know where I stand as far as the programming. I'm just gonna leave it right there. So we may never agree,
No,
Bob.
you said it
but
well
I look
right up.
forward. I look forward to trying to discuss it.
Absolutely, you said it well right up front. You said, we looked at this for the highest level of education that we can, and coming to the 904 number, that's our job. And totally agree, that's your job. From my perspective, and the job that I'm trying to do is make sure I understand how the taxpayer dollars are spent. And is it the best use, particularly given $3+ million a year in debt service that the town of Brewster is going to have to swallow if this moves forward.
And I do respect your position, so, thank you.
All right, Don?
Thank you, and thank you very much for being here. I do agree with Bob, these questions need to be answered, and I think Clarissa said it well. She said, of course we'll pay for it, and I would add on there, at what cost? And the cost isn't just the money, and you think of it in stoic terms of real estate taxes. The cost really is laid most disproportionately, anyway, on the elder population that we have in Brewster. We have a lot of elders. I think 55% over, 50% over 55, is that?
59%.
59% over the age 55.
So these are the people who are going to be paying for it. And it's not an issue of paying for children they don't have. This is our community duty. We will be paying for the education that our children need. I don't want, though, to have such a tax burden on people who have found Brewster their home. They work and they live here. This is their community, and force them out because they can't afford to live here. That would be a shame. It'd be beyond a shame. So we need to figure out how to pay for that total cost, as Honey and Bill were talking about, and to budget for the maintenance starting day one of this new facility. I think that's where you were going with that. And then to factor in OPEB. I think that the towns need to consider educational costs writ large and know what they're paying for their children's education. That question about how much does it cost to educate a single student? Well, there are a lot of factors you can put in that and a lot of factors you can take out. But you ought to be putting the cost of the facility and ongoing maintenance and the ongoing administrative bills that you have every year, plus OPEB. That ought to be figured in. We in Brewster have made great strides in figuring out what the mission of the town of Brewster is. We have a charter committee that's meeting, that's going to define how the town carries out its duties toward that mission. And one of the things that really I'm heartened by is your meeting with the finance directors and the town administrators of each town. Because this should not be a single town's approach to the school budget. It needs to be all the towns. We're all on Cape Cod. We're in this little region, 4 towns, plus Provincetown and Truro, who need to come to grips with how to pay for the students' education. And they can't do it town by town, I don't think. I think they ought to do it in a composite, collaborative way And I think starting with the meetings with the town administrators and the directors of finances is a great start. I would extend that, if you are amenable to it, to the finance committees and the full select boards of all of the towns meeting to really put our heads together to what is a constructive project that can have destructive consequences if we don't handle the finances right. So getting these finances of what we have to do and we will do for our future generations, I think getting the financing right so that we don't cause a lot of destruction as we construct this new school. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Frank?
I'd like to add my thanks to you folks coming in here and all the work that you've put into this. It's quite a daunting challenge, but you know, a couple of things that I've heard that give me great concern about where we are here. You know, demographics like climate change is here now. It's not down the road. So we're going to find exactly where we are in terms of the voting population in these 4 towns in fairly short order about whether or not they're willing to step up and vote for this project. And my concern is the project that's presented as it is here is not one that I think I'm going to be able to get my arms around and support. I'm going to try hard to work to do that, but I just don't see an avenue to get there because I think there are just some flaws in this process that are really not anyone's fault. You know, I think we've got a box that the MSBA has basically put us in that says this is how you're going to be able to go through this, and this is what you're going to have to do in order to go through this, and you got to check 1 million boxes, and this is what we're going to pay for. But then you've got an aging population in the communities that you're supposed to be serving that simply cannot step up and spend this kind of money to build a new high school because, you know, in Brewster, our average taxpayer revenue based upon, you know, the DRI report is somewhere in the $31,000 range. You know, in Orleans, it's 52. Maybe they can, but I don't see it happening here in Brewster. So I think really the whole issue of cost per student that is so well delineated in Bob's work is an issue that maybe we shouldn't almost be looking at it right now. Maybe that's an issue that should have been looked at early on. Because one of the biggest risks that this project faces is your ability to sell it to your communities. And if we could get the communities around the idea of, okay, you know, it is going to cost you $34,000, $35,000, $6,000 a year to educate a student in this world, and here's the reasons for it, then maybe you get people on board to step up who, you know, have a very, very low income. But I think that's the kind of thing that probably should have happened earlier on. And I think some of the decisions about whether to rebuild a plan that, in my mind, was never suited in the first place, as opposed to going a different route, where we could probably bring some more efficiencies into play. I just think that might have been the way to go. But you know, I will continue to look for ways to try to get behind this. But I've got to be honest and just say at this point, I don't see an easy road ahead of me on this.
Thank you. Down to me. All right, first question I have for our town administration, can we post those questions? And also, if there's a way to post them on the regional, because I think the people that are watching tonight or when it's rerun are gonna wanna hear that. And it leads me to my biggest point tonight, is that I think based on the fact the amount of time that was put into by this committee in developing those questions, and make sure I had a very clear understanding of the broad perspective of the project, and your committees looking at all of those to make sure that you came back with all of the answers for those questions, even though we had a little out of order, but we got them all done. I think it really shows that everybody is committed to making the most educated decision that we possibly can in supporting this project, but also letting the taxpayers know that there's a thorough vetting process that's gone through by the people that represent them to make those recommendations. The next is I will make the follow-up and connect everybody on the emails to follow up, because I think it's important to really understand the financial side of it. And that, the next item is, I know the school committee has their own direction that you can move forward in. I want to encourage you publicly to look at the option to gain the support of all of the town's select boards and finance committees, as they did with the Cape Cod Tech project. And that Bob Sanborn went to every community and really got a lot of support, and you see how it turned out. My last thing is the 30-year bond note. I was the one who brought it up when we were initiating the fire station way back when in the town of Brewster. I understand the argument on the other side is you pay more in interest. Everybody understands that. But it is a more equitable spread of the cost of the project when you amortize it over 30 years. And that many of our seniors that Don talked about, now, that could be a significant factor, whether they're paying, a larger percentage on a 20-year note versus a smaller percentage in their amount of time within the town. But I wanted to also just congratulate everybody for all of the work and the very good professional conversations and the ability to disagree respectfully and have all different points of view. I think it was very, very productive, and unfortunately, the last meeting we were all together at, we were all kind of cut short. And I greatly appreciate your willingness to all come right back and meet with us and have a good 2-hour conversation.
Won't be the last one.
Oh, that's for sure.
We hope not.
John, you and I will be talking about this at the Brewster Coffee Shop when we're
And-
both retired.
And to Greg and Tom's credit, they have gone to, had meetings just like this with the respected three other towns. So we are doing a traveling roadshow.
And one of the suggestions by members of this committee was to look at future meetings to bring everybody together. I don't know how you could potentially do that, but it may be an opportunity to have one meeting where all of the groups are together, so a lot of sharing of thoughts and ideas.
You want to try that?
Yeah, I'll try. Talk about herding cats, no offense.
Got it.
I go to a joint school committee meeting once a quarter, and there's 30 people in the room, and it's a lot of fun. The only thing I would ask is that if everyone is going to take the time to arrange a schedule to get the 4 groups together, whether they be Select Board or FinCom, is that we all have a goal and point to discuss that night. And whether it's a little further down the road when we have a grasp on, whether or not, what gets built, what doesn't get built. I mean, we have, $140 million is our cap, but, we have not, as a building committee, gone through and started paring down and looking at the value engineering. So I don't know whether it would be good to have that discussion sooner or later, because we would like, if we're gonna have that type of discussion and that type of event, I think we'd wanna have a goal as to what specifically is gonna be discussed, whether that's financing, whether that's, you know what I'm getting at.
I got it. You gotta close the
Should be
agenda,
narrow
be
and
very focused
focused
on the agenda.
discussion.
And have multiple meetings, or it is potentially hurting cats. Don?
Well, I was just going to point out the multiple meeting issue. It's not like it would be productive to have everybody in one room at one time. I think much like many professional meetings, you have people who have a designated interest. We appoint members of the committee to talk about this issue or that issue or the other issue. And we have 10 meetings rooms where we meet, and we have a plenary meeting at the beginning, a plenary meeting at the end. But we take issues in the manageable bites of the issue and the people addressing them. I don't see it a productive meeting that is in one room for all those people to discuss something all day long. That's my input. Thank you.
Just make a
Absolutely.
note on it. I mean, just 2 points here. Something we have tried to do all along in this process is have the towns involved. We've had meetings before we started this, when we began the soy. On the OPEB, we invited the towns in for discussion of how we were gonna proceed. So, I mean, the goal is to work with the towns this, in any way possible. And if the 30-year note is the way to do it, then that's the way to do it. I mean, and nobody's, the trouble is that we have to get the other towns to agree also with that. So it's gonna help, we're gonna need some help in that process to convince others that that would be the way to go. I understand in your town and in your situation, that's perfect. I would hope that the other towns would also feel that way also. So I mean, that's, it's not, we're not locked on anything. It's, we want to make this viable. We want to bring in a quality school at a good cost. That's our goal. I mean, that's what we've been working towards all along, is just improving what we have.
But, just to follow up with Don on this, I don't want to belabor this, but when you talk about financing and you get all of the representatives, some representation from all select boards, all finance committees, and town administration, you're having a conversation and you can understand where the other town's perspective is, where it's not in a vacuum. Well, we heard from such and such a town, they want to go in that direction.
I agree.
And then you guys, so you can share those ideas. And I think, I'll speak for our town administration, because we've come to be bonded together, that them being involved, they have made a very concerted effort to keep this committee informed on all of the activities that they're involved with. So I would understand that, Peter would be bringing back to us after the meeting that you would have with some update for us. They are very committed to that, so there is that open transparency that's in there. So I speak for him, but hopefully he agrees. There you go. I got a thumbs up, so I want that to go on the record. So, all right, so we've covered everything, and
So
there
just
we
one
go.
point, Mike, I'd be glad, we've already had our rotation with all the FinComs and the selectmen, and we're about to go back in. I'll raise this exact point as I go into each of those meetings of the desire to possibly bring everybody together, okay?
Mr. Chairman, as one of the cat herding masters, I put on our agenda for November the issue of construction management at risk. I don't have much choice. That has to be decided before we submit to MSBA in December. So, to that point, the building committee has asked to have a speaker come before us who's done construction management at risk, who is a disinterested third party. He's a Mr. Anthony from the town of Barnstable, used to be on the airport commission. So as soon as that meeting is set up, I will let you all know, and hopefully you can attend that meeting. It's a basis of information for us to make that decision at some point. And as I told you back in June, we're not gonna make that decision until we hear from other folks than just the building committee in the room. That's a commitment on my part, but I need to make that decision no later than December 1st for my commitment to the site. So, thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right, next item we have on our agenda is discuss the Charter Committee public forum. I just threw together a quick draft list of, 5 components. And so, as I understand with communication back from both Peter and Bill, this is gonna be an ongoing forum. This is just our introduction. And that we have the composition of our committee, how we are appointed, and the length of the terms. And then Don had brought up the committee charge and authority to having more definition on that as we move forward. And that the third item I had was a meeting schedule, is to understand that we are committed to meet regularly on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock is our schedule currently now, in order to cover all of the warrant articles, which also goes back to item number 2. And that one of the things we've been working on to put to the Charter Committee is public access to our materials, to try to get to the same level as the Select Board. So that would be a comment that would be made. And also, I think, very important, especially to those of us that have been around a long time, and the feedback we get, is to continue our annual town meeting presentation. That gives a macro view to the thing. So I would be going on Saturday and just laying that out and then welcoming anyone else to participate. That's how we want to make our first step, and that we do want to be actively involved, continuing as it moves forward.
May I ask a brief question?
Sure.
Relative to the Charter Committee, I've expressed the opinion in a Charter Committee meeting that the name of this committee should not just be Finance, but Finance and Warrant Committee.
It goes,
I would like just to throw that open to my colleagues here and see what your sense is. Anybody agree, disagree? Think it's a good idea, bad idea?
I agree, and I'll give you, because I've been around the longest, that we always get the questions, why people come in and why do you
Right.
review and vote on a warrant that's not financially related?
Right, that's exactly the point.
So that would clearly define that. So, anybody have anything else?
I know I asked that question when I talked with you.
Yes. Right, and that's been the history, because this is the oldest committee in the town
Yep.
of Brewster as well, so it predates
With some of the
Select
oldest
Board.
people.
Some of the oldest people, yeah.
Yeah, I was here in 1929, that's when I first got appointed.
Well,
I don't look that bad.
Getting
Yes,
older
sir.
quick.
in fact, before this charter committee came and we were doing a revision of our charter, we were only the warrant committee. And I think pointing out that we are, the warrant committee, but first we are the finance committee that has many more duties and they are expansive from the current charter. I think that's an important.
Well, in reviewing other towns' charters, I've seen predominantly 3 different names for this committee. It's called Finance, it's called Finance and Warrant, or it's called Advisory. Those are the 3 names I've seen. Of all of those 3, I personally prefer Finance and Warrant because I think it is the most descriptive.
Right, you're describing to town meeting what your focus is.
Right.
Is on assessing the warrants and reviewing the finances that are being presented.
As to the composition of the committee, I have expressed the opinion to the Charter Committee that the way we are appointed, formed, the rotation, the size of the committee is all perfect the way it is, and we really shouldn't mess with it. The moderator should appoint us 3 at a time to serve 3-year terms. I believe that's the right way to do it, to maintain a level of independence from other town government bodies.
Anybody else?
Agree.
Okay, all right, we're moving forward. So with that being said, it's close to 8:30. We don't have any minutes. Our meeting schedule has all been completed. Peter, Mimi, and I have set it all out for the next 2 weeks. I will make sure it's forwarded to everyone. We'll defer liaison assignments to the future. And are there any other meeting requests that anybody has at this point?
I have a request for this meeting that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thanks, guys. Great job.